Yes, you will rise from the ashes, but the burning comes first. For this part, darling, you must be brave. And that's Kaylin Dion. And with that, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. And we're starting off a little differently than we normally start off, and that's with just some prose or writing that we recently came across that seemed particularly resonant and meaningful for Hamish and I. And that one in particular struck me this week as a friend of mine messaged about a tough time she's going through with a family emergency. And it made me feel like, yeah, sometimes you have to go through that burning of relationships, burning of situation before you can go to the next thing. And it can be really painful. And it also is appropriate given the recent fire in Thornton, for which Hamish...
Weird coincidence, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you were very close to that. So I don't know if you want to say more now or we can touch on that later. You want to talk about it in the Carveout. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to the House Einstein podcast. This is House Einstein podcast number 109. And I'm your host, Osman Parvez. With me is also Hamish Crabb. And if you are new to the podcast, we are based in Boulder, Colorado, where it's always sunny and the majority of the children are above average.
And there's that one person that jogs around town greased up.
Right, there is that.
Yeah.
The average child quote is from like a NPR show that used to exist.
Oh, really?
About Lake Wobegon, where half the children, where all the children are above average, which just is hilarious, right? But yeah, so in this podcast, we're going to talk about a variety of topics. Our mission at the House Einstein brokerage, which is separate and distinct from this podcast, is to help you make a smarter real estate decision. And if you are a client of the brokerage, please contact us before you make any real estate decisions. That's the best way to reach us. Do not make any decisions, whether you are a client or otherwise, on anything you hear in the podcast. This podcast is entertainment. And you can check out our bios at houseeinstein.com. And that's a great place to learn more about us. But now let me jump right into our topics. Our closing table topic is about what's happening with mountain properties, what's going on in the resort markets of Aspen, Vail, and Breckenridge in particular. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about a dark tale from the trenches, a recent real estate transaction where it was no longer just hypothetical about disclosure of traumatic circumstances.
Psychological defects? Yeah.
I think that's the way Colorado law looks at this, but every state is different. And there was certainly a stigmatizing and very traumatic event that happened with a listing, and we'll tell you the whole story and how it played out, minus the address. We're not going to share that because it's too tragic. It is a dark story, but I think it's worth sharing it to illustrate that it's not just hypothetical. It actually matters, and the psychological stigma on a listing can have a huge impact on the sale. We're going to then do a deep dive very specifically into one neighborhood in Boulder. So we're no longer just going to focus in on the entire city. We're going to talk very specifically about Newlands and what's happening in the Newlands market. And then we're going to jump into sales of the week. And I have a lot on the docket. I put 6 properties on here. I'm not sure we're going to get through all of them, given that we don't want this podcast generally to go much over 2 hours. But we have 6, and we'll walk you through all of those. And then there's a little nugget of shameless self-promotion that we like to squeeze into our podcast. And we have a new listing that's coming on market in the next week or two. We just got it staged yesterday, and it looks amazing. I'll talk a little bit
really
about why you stayed.
Yeah.
You haven't seen it yet? Oh yeah.
No,
Hamish,
just that one picture, and I'm like, whoa. Yeah.
It looks so much. It looks great. I think it will likely fly off the market. So we'll talk about that, and I think we'll also talk really about the value of staging during that segment. I think that's important.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump into our hot takes on news items for this week, which include official venues for Sundance being announced here in Boulder, as well as a lot of discussion of existential AI risk for white-collar workers, including us. And if we have time, we might talk about the greenhouse gas lawsuit that's moving on to the Supreme Court and that Boulder is part of. Boulder is the plaintiff. Maybe one of, I don't know if we're the only plaintiff. I don't know that
Boulder.
much. Is it just Boulder? You can look that up while we're...
Well, you will find out, listener.
You will find
in the
out.
news segment. Yeah.
And then we've got our carve-outs, and I won't reveal, I guess Hamish already mentioned a little bit about what he'll be talking about, which is the recent Thornton fire. And if I get to my carve-out, I get to my carve-out. So we'll surprise you with it when we get there. And that's
You missed yours last week. You're doing it this week. I'll take the hit this time. Yeah.
Okay, so I did not have time to do it last week, so I'll do it this week if we have time. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. And that's our docket for the House Einstein podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get after it. Hamish.
I almost feel like we need a audio sting there, like a record scratch or something as we dive into the closing table. We'll make a little note for that. But mountain properties.
All right. So as you know, House Einstein does work in the mountains. We typically don't go very much past Vail. We've done Breckenridge, we've done Winter Park, and I'll go where my clients want me to go as an agent, as would most agents. But you really run into problems when you do that as an agent. You have to really understand what's going on in these markets to be of value, or you have to be willing to do the hard work of due diligence and research to understand what's happening in the market. So let's talk about what's going on. And last year, the median price for single-family houses in Aspen reached $14.7 million, a 10% increase from the previous year. And there were 79 closed single-family transactions, a 22% increase. And dollar volume was up 17%. So dollar volume, by the way, is something only agents care about. But for some reason, luxury brokers like to talk about dollar volume. It's completely irrelevant. But dollar volume last year in Aspen was $1.5 billion.
And that's just condos, adding up the sales, like the list, like sale price of all the homes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Okay. In the condo townhome segment, the median price held at $3.45 million. While the average surged 27% to just under $5.8 million. Snowmass condo sales declined sharply, down more than 50%, and the overall combined market volume was down 4% to just over $2.6 billion for the year. And the dollar per square for a single-family house in Aspen was almost $3,965, also up 10% year over year. And Aspen is almost certainly the most expensive market on a price per square basis in the entire United States. And of course, most of those transactions are cash, which is typical for a luxury market. All right, let's talk about Vail. According to the Colorado Association of Realtors, Eagle County's single-family median sale price reached $1.88 million, with the average climbing to 3.1, and that's a 9% increase year over year. Inventory was up 30%, which gives buyers more options. And for townhomes and condos, the median was $1,004,000 with an average of 1.54, and much of that is vacation rental demand. According to one report, we're seeing well-priced properties in Vail Village and Lions Head continuing to attract multiple offers, but inventory is 15 to 20% below pre-pandemic levels.
Almost 6 years now. Oh, well, 6 years now.
That's a long time ago. And now let's talk about Breck. And Breck, which is the most approachable and most likely to be the second a vacation market for the Front Range, because Vail and Aspen have become so that I wouldn't say overvalued. Their values they've gotten so high that you're now looking at ultra luxury buyers only for Aspen, and very close to that in Vail. But it says Breck is showing the most notable softening of these markets, and the average sale price fell about 6% year over year, and the median sale price dropped more than 10%. And days on market surged, went from 15 days to 36 days. So with that said, the market's not collapsing. Year to date, the Summit County's average residential price was up 3.9%, and single-family house sales rose 20%, but you're essentially looking at flat prices. And condo sales increased 8% with a modest 2% gain. Boy, some of these data points are kind of conflicting. As I'm reading them out loud, it sure seemed authoritative, but let me read you the final paragraph of this report. And it says, all three markets share some common threads heading into 2026. Inventory is rising from historic lows. Buyers have more negotiating power than any point since 2019, and days on market are extending across the board. Aspen remains bulletproof at the ultra-luxury end due to extreme scarcity and billionaire-class demand. Vail's holding firm in the 1 to 3 million range with strong international interest, and Breck offers the most accessible entry point and is showing the most price flexibility, making it arguably the most buyer-friendly of the three right now. And here's your disclaimer. I didn't write any of that. All of that came from the latest model of Claude, and it was referenced with links to the reports it was drawing from, which include includes Christie's, includes
the MLS up there,
includes supposedly the MLS, includes a buy-side broker, and it's just sort of stitched together. But as Hamish and I started diving into this report, we realized that what AI is telling us is not necessarily what the underlying report is saying. And not only that, it was ignoring the pretty significant bias that some of the sources have. I mean, for example,
carrying it on, right? Yeah.
Well, one of the headlines in this report from a brokerage, I don't think I'm going to mention their name because I don't think this is really their fault. Most buy-side agents are going to have this type of attitude, but the headline or the subtitle is Why Vail's Real Estate Market Stands Out. And then there's a bunch of data below that have been cherry-picked to encourage buyers to acquire in Vail. And it reminds me of the buy-side research that I was part of when I worked on Wall Street, where it's very biased, right? Because you are on the buy side, you often have an investment banking relationship with the person or the entity, the company that you're covering. And even though there's supposed to be a so-called Chinese wall between research and banking, it was a joke. There really wasn't a Chinese wall. And boy, I hope somebody doesn't, come subpoena me for saying that. But 100%, I saw things that really opened my eyes. Yeah. Well, I doubt it when it comes to that much money. But with that said, you have to take research with a grain of salt. Who's providing the research and what are their motivations? And many agents feel like it's their job to cheerlead sales. So they always want you to jump in and buy, and then they cherry pick data to encourage you to feel confident that you're buying into an amazing place called Vail. And guess what? AI is drawing on this report and treating these paragraphs of data as if, first, they're accurate, and second, that they're not biased. And when you start to dive into it, AI has its own biases and has written this in a way to sound neutral, but really isn't at all. And then it's conflating things. So the very beginning of this research report, which we'll include in the
it's linked
show
below.
Notes.
As with pretty much everything we talk about. Yeah, linked below.
It's the first paragraph, or the first sentence is, here's a current breakdown of the real estate market across these three major Colorado resort towns based on the latest available research. But it's not the latest available research. In fact, it provides links below to things that are quite dated and conflicting with each other. So I think what was initially when I read this was like, oh, I was feeling some confidence about this. And then as we dived into verification and looked at the sources and the actual dates of the data it was drawing from, it became pretty clear that this is worse than useless. It's inaccurate and doesn't really address, I think, the fiduciary duty that an advisor should have to a buyer or seller to help them really understand what's going on relative to their unique situation. So I wanted to bring it up because we do serve the mountains. And if you were to ask us to go look at real estate in Breck or Vail, we probably would punt for Aspen and partner with an agent there because we're just not on the ground. We would be really cautious and dive deep into it. Let me give you the parallel on how it used to work on Nantucket, where I got my start in real estate. And we had our weekly meeting. There was a bullpen of 8 to 10 agents. And in the bullpen, we would bring up listings that we're bringing to market or buyers with certain needs, which, by the way, creates all sorts of conflicts of interest, right? Because you really shouldn't be saying my buyer can go to 1.5 million or 3.5 million with the seller's representative in the same room, right? But let's ignore that for a moment. But what I remember learning about was watching how these agents, and I was not experienced at the time, but watching how these agents thought about pricing. And they would kind of just chew on it together and say, okay, well, if this one house on Main Street sold last spring for 2.7, this house is in a better location, not materially better, but slightly better, but maybe with not as great finishes. So probably about the same. I think I could get my buyers to 2.7 million on this, right? That's the kind of thought process. It was very qualitative, not quantitative. And that's what happens in a very small market like Aspen, where the majority of agents in that town probably aren't even doing one deal a year, right? Yeah. There's a handful of agents that are going to be doing several deals a year, and that's more than enough income for them. And they dominate the market. And then there's a bunch of agents that might do one deal every other year. And that's what we saw, or at least I saw personally, in another ultra luxury market called Nantucket, where I got my start. And the point I'm trying to make is that there's so much misinformation out there, and I think it's about to get worse. And without watching how the data and the analysis is performed, I think buyers and sellers are at an extreme disadvantage. And they may conclude, like we started to, that this is actually it sure sounded authoritative and confident when we read it.
It's good at that.
But then we're like, hold up, what's the backdrop? What about the specific neighborhood, property type, price range? It isn't actually useful, and it gives false confidence in its analysis. So maybe it's true, Hamish, that Aspen and Vail are still strong and Breck faltered last year. I don't actually know because I haven't done that analysis. The way we would do the analysis, and I've done Breck deals, I've done Winter Park, is when a client takes us up there. And we then dive into the MLS, the raw data, and look at it really closely. Look at the active competitors, look at the most recent closings that were very similar. If possible, get feedback from the agents on what that sale process was like. And most agents are collaborative. And when we figure that out, then we advise our client. Like, that's very time consuming, but then we have confidence in the analysis that it's actually actionable to the client's specific need. And that's really the only way to do it.
And I think this goes to kind of like that broader existential subject that we'll cover a little bit further on in the podcast. But I don't know. I didn't look for it right in the sources that Claude gave us, but no mention of the snowpack or, kind of top of everybody's mind. And part of my Carveout, Colorado's tinder dry right now, and the mountains are also looking pretty barren too. So I imagine that's going to play a fair part in the way things go up there.
I would be deeply concerned seeing the snowpack charts that Aspen and Vail and Breck are going to continue to see robust visits from people that fly in to have an exotic, well, it's not that exotic, but to have a ski weekend in Colorado. This year, I got messages from a friend in Japan who was on the Epic Pass at 2 feet of snow. They're having an amazing time, but we're parked
Japan's
down here.
Doing really well, right? Yeah.
So if we're at some point, word gets out, right? Like next year when people are planning their winter vacations, if they had a bad year this year in Vail or Breck, are they going to come back? Probably not.
Yeah, and the strikes for the other resort towns too, where people are show up and nothing's operating. Like
Right,
Telluride, that's right. Yeah, a little worried for the future of the ski industry as a whole. And I mean the what is it? The butterfly effect from that. Yeah,
for sure. Maybe not the butterfly effect, but the follow-on effects for sure. Maybe not the extreme butterfly.
The snowflake effect.
The butterfly effect is a butterfly in one part of the country results in a storm in another part of the country. We're not quite that. I think that, but the follow-on or knock-on effects of a bad ski year can last years, and we've had several years in a row of decreasing snowpack, and this year is insanely warm here in Boulder, so. That also puts fire risk higher up in the due diligence chart in terms of investing here in Colorado, and I hear you might notice a little difference in tone, right? Even though we do represent buyers and we also represent sellers, we as an ethos feel like it's our duty to be honest about what risks exist and where your due diligence. Really, we want to encourage due diligence. We don't want to cheerlead Colorado as real estate agents. That's just not how we roll, although a lot do. And I love living in Boulder, right? I will say that if I cheerlead Boulder, it's honest because I love this community, but it's not without its downsides. And high fire risk, decreasing water resources are all at risk from increasing temperatures and less precipitation.
Season. Yeah. Enough said. And it's because I know one of the agents on our team sold their mountain property, and so I'm wondering if it might be a trend we start to see or how things are going to change. And I'm citing it could be inaccurate, but it said 75 or 70% of homes are cash deals, billionaire held. It's a very strong seller market up there. Well, can they keep fudging it like that, right? Like if they just hold on to the properties and keep them at the value, is it still the value in their books, or is it only until they start selling where the land bank starts losing its value? Am I making sense?
You're using some terms that are confusing me a little bit, because land bank means something very specific.
Okay.
And the thought process for the ultra wealthy when it comes to holding real estate assets is a little different than an ordinary home buyer or somebody buying a second home, like in Breckenridge. What drives that purchase decision and retention decision could involve family planning. There's a lot of emotional needs, right? Like you're flying in on your Gulfstream to party with your friends for a week. And being able to say you own it says a lot, right? Like it's very
status.
It's very status driven, and like I've spent time in Aspen because of good friends of ours who used to invite us every year to spend basically a week in Aspen. And Sophie's family has like a timeshare or something in Aspen too, and Aspen's magical. It's really cool, but it also is like another level of like bonfire of the vanities kind of behavior. Like it's just shenanigans, and it's hard to be grounded, and it's one of the reasons.
Different kind of reality. Yeah.
It's a little bit make believe, right? In terms of how people are living their lives and the scramble to cater to extreme wealth. I don't know. I find it kind of not so exciting. I just as an aside, when the Westmore Club on Nantucket was forming, I was part of that entity in terms of building financial models and helping get construction requisitions out of the way. And I love the island, okay? Let me be very clear about that. But as part of our membership drive to kick off the club, we had a bunch of parties. And at one of those parties, my now ex interacted with a prospective member, and it was a couple, right? And the couple walked up to us, and they were very excited to talk to us. And we started chatting with them, and inevitably they got around to asking, "What do we do?" And I told them, I work for the club. Effectively, I'm working for the junior partner, and I'm on the finance team, and I'm I'm the associate for the club and helping get this thing off the ground. And then they turned to my now ex and said, so what do you do? And, they're very nicely dressed and it's a cocktail party. And my ex likes to stir things up. And she said, I'm a maid at a Airbnb. I'm a maid at a local inn. And the woman of the couple is like, oh, and immediately turned and started talking to somebody else. Like, did not even, was just like, immediate classism came into that that interaction. And it was so grotesque. And I don't know if those people ever made it into the club, because the club is a nice institution. But that membership party, that interaction, you get those people that are trying to social climb in those types of environments. And then you also have people that have so much money they honestly don't care. In fact, they would rather you didn't know how much wealth they had. And they dress very, very casual. I would even say, it's a New York term. I think it might be Yiddish. They dress like schlubs. Like, they dress like, the more comical and schlubby they are, the more likely they are to be a billionaire. It's the ones that are trying really hard that are not. And that's an observation from having lived on that island for a few years, is just how people behave. So whatever. That's just...
New money, old money. East egg, west egg. Maybe
a little bit. A little bit. There's a new money, old money vibe thing going on there, too. And again, I want to say this one more time. I really loved living on Nantucket and the friendships I made on Nantucket and the interactions I had with people of all classes. And it gave me my start in real estate, so I'm not complaining, but I know the vibe can be the same in Aspen with pretentious wealth that sometimes shows up. So I don't know why we're talking about that as part of this AI research on Nantucket, on Aspen.
Engaged listener, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully you're getting all the billionaire sleaze that we're whipping out, the billionaire stories. But let's move on, Hamish, because we're going to come back to AI and existential risk in our profession from the new AI tools that are coming out in the news segment, when we talk about our hot takes about what's going on with news stories. And for now, I'd like to move on to Tales from the Trenches.
Yeah, so this one, I'm glad we're talking about it. I forgot about it. I thought it was recent, and I think we've got more than enough time between this topic now and our buyers finding this out. Oz, I think you're going to be far more tactful in bringing this up, but I don't know. I wanted to intro the tales a little bit.
So first, Tales from the Trenches are based on real experiences in the real estate world as real estate advisors, investors, agents, and we do our best to anonymize some details as needed. And the reason we're sharing these is because most people don't really know what goes on in the real estate world, especially in the brokerage world, and it can be kind of eye-opening. And in Colorado, buyers and sellers and their agents are legally required to disclose property defects. And I'll even add one more piece: proactively disclose defects. Yeah. So if I'm your agent and you tell me that the ceiling is asbestos and you have a report about it, I'm going to say, send me the report. But even if you say, I don't have the report, but I know it's asbestos, I'm now legally required to disclose that. So you should put it on the seller's property disclosure. And if you don't, I'm going to make sure every buyer knows, because I have to. And it's the right thing to do as well, right? So not everything requires legal disclosure, and psychologically stigmatizing events in the state of Colorado are not a required disclosure. And that can include something as horrific as a murder or a suicide, which for a lot of people is a big deal.
You'd want to know. Yeah.
You'd want to know. And I certainly, my mother would be one of these people. She's very spiritual and religious, and it would kill the deal. Now, the funny thing is, of course, people die all the time. There are billions of people on the planet.
Likely at home, yeah.
And prior to probably the 1950s, most of those deaths were occurring in homes, right? People weren't going to the hospital to die. They certainly weren't going to hospice to die.
Yeah.
And death was much more a part of, I think, awareness of death was much more a part of life. Like, we were closer to that experience. And since then, death has become sanitized in our culture. But for real estate purposes, and again, this varies by the state, Colorado doesn't require this disclosure that there was a death or a murder or anything else that happened in this house, that as long as it isn't actually a property defect. So we were looking at a listing last year in Sunshine Canyon, and that's as far as I'm going to go with identifying the address. And this is a really interesting house. We saw it twice, and as part of our recommendations for due diligence, we encourage our buyers to go meet the neighbors. And it's usually better to meet the neighbors before you write the offer. Sometimes you can't get that done, but in this case, my buyers were able to do that. And the neighbor disclosed that there had been a child death in that house that we were looking at. And it had been a suicide of a preteen. And the family had since moved, and the neighbor didn't know where the family was, but the neighbor felt very strongly that they needed the buyer to know that this had happened. And I don't know your spiritual beliefs, Hamish, but sometimes homes have there's a vibe in a
energy,
house.
a feng shui.
Yeah. There's just a vibe, and that house did feel like off. Like it felt like distress. It felt like bad things, right? Like the way it had been left behind, dirty and disheveled, right? And windows dirty. Like people had left in a hurry and upset. Is how it felt, and it didn't surprise me.
Probably, yeah.
It didn't surprise me when I learned that what had happened in the house, and it did give my clients pause, and they needed a day or two to think about it. And during that time, another buyer came and snagged the house, but it turned out that our buyers were fine with it. They just needed to think about it, and I imagine they had a conversation around their spiritual beliefs as a couple, and they were thinking about having a child at that point. They now do, and they bought a different house, and they're lovely people, and I hope they're very happy with what they bought. But they didn't get this house in Sunshine Canyon. And they sort of kicked themselves because they didn't move fast enough. But it was really interesting because I don't think most buyers shopping as a couple, right?
Like if you were shopping... That. Yeah.
What's that? If you were shopping...
I wouldn't have expected that, from them.
That they would have...
That they were still interested after, yeah. Yeah, I was surprised to hear that they were.
I think it's such a personal thing. Like I imagine if my wife and I were shopping, and we learned that there had been a tragic death, or a traumatic experience in the house, I think my wife would say no. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
90% probability. It doesn't matter how much of a good deal it is. If there's that sort of traumatic energy that happened in that house, that she's going to not want it. And I guess I would, personally, I might be on the same page. I would want to bring, somebody to come bless the house, cleanse the house, the Boulder shaman, that comes through and smudges it and releases, or we would have our own ceremony in the house or something to cleanse it emotionally and energetically, and maybe if nobody really knows where we go after we die, but if you do believe there's an in-between and there's people stuck here waiting in the in-betweens, maybe encourage them to let go and move on from that traumatic experience.
I can't remember if it was like the Halloween podcast or something, but maybe I'm inventing this memory, but I remember you telling a story, I think, where there was a house, I think some clients got it cleansed and you could feel the difference, which always gives me some crazy pause because, you felt the energy in this particular house, and you just got to wonder. And then, these particular clients, I was almost impressed with their decision to carry on. I'm personally, I don't actually, being in that situation, I don't know what I would do. I really don't.
It's not a common situation, but it's a weird one. And if you are house shopping, you may want to have that conversation with your other decision maker, particularly if you are looking at homes that are pre-war.
Yeah.
Because if they're pre-war, they're way more likely that not just one person has died in this house. There's probably been quite a few people that have died in this house. And if you believe in ghosts or spirits, well, you may want to just talk about that now before we're house shopping, right? Before we're doing these showings and thinking about writing an offer. If your spiritual and religious beliefs include that sort of structure to it. And it's not just because it's not just because you should avoid the houses or not avoid the houses. It's because you may not have time to think about it. And in this case, they lost the house because of that delay. And they...
That's true, think in advance.
They probably would have gotten that house if we had been able to move a day or two faster.
Knowing that agent, it would have been an interesting deal. And this is going to sound, I think, a little sharkish, but the positive or the potential upside, if you decide you don't like it or it turns out to be haunted, is you don't have to disclose it. You just also want to hope that the neighbor doesn't for you as well. Very sharkish thing to say, but putting that out there.
I don't know if it's... So that's a great ethical question. So if you're the agent and you know that there's been a tragedy in the house and your client does not want it disclosed to future buyers, I think you have a fiduciary duty to keep your mouth shut. And if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't take the listing. Or you should recuse yourself and ask to have the listing agreement terminated. Because if you feel strongly that this has to be disclosed and it's not legally required and your client has told you to not disclose it, it seems like you have a duty to your client there and not a duty to your own.
On what you're doing, selling houses where people die in them.
Right. Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's going to happen to... I don't know of a house where there was a tragedy like that where I was the listing agent, but it would pose an interesting ethical dilemma. I think I would be okay not disclosing. It's sort of like an attorney that represents a client that in a defense case, and you're the defense attorney and you know your client's guilty. But that doesn't mean you have a higher duty to the law and to give this person the best defense you can. Even though you know their duty. And that's because your allegiance is to the law, not to the client, and your belief is in our legal system, right? And so that I get that, and I respect that, although you got to wonder, right, the people that represented Jeffrey Epstein, right? How do you... Like, who are these people that can sleep at night? But this isn't quite the Jeffrey Epstein scenario. This is death, and death is common. Death is part of life. So, all right.
There's, it's got 14 million views, and it's 9 years ago. And I don't really remember the takeaways, but it just, I think I'm going to link it. It's got to be appropriate. It's this lawyer, and the title is "My Answer to How Do You Defend Someone You Think Is Guilty?" And I think he answers it really well. It's a total tangent, but it's, I think, old enough and has enough views now. It's kind of like one of those YouTube classics. The top comment: "This guy's good at making points. He should be a lawyer."
Okay. All right. Thanks for looking at that.
But
that's okay. I think that wraps up this Tales from the Trenches. Let's move on to market conditions. What do you say?
Yeah, let's get granular.
Okay. So in this week's edition of Market Conditions, we're going to dive deep into the Newlands neighborhood of Boulder. And the reason I feel like this is useful is to illustrate how different the analysis is when you get to this level of granularity versus looking at a research report that covers all of Boulder, or worse, conflates attached dwellings and single-family homes throughout all of Boulder, or doesn't segment the market by price range, right? Because it's a completely different market. But I can tell you that having worked with many, many buyers, we start to triangulate neighborhoods because that's where they want to live. And so there's such a distinction between east and west of Broadway. Even right across the street from Newlands, the market is completely different with materially different numbers, that an analysis that was like east of Broadway would be irrelevant to an analysis west of Broadway if you had decided Newlands is what you wanted. And there's one more piece I'm going to add to this, in that Newlands officially is much smaller than what most people think of Newlands. There are sub-neighborhoods on Alpine, for example, and Balsam that have weird names, like I want to say Selkirk something. It's a funky name. Right? And technically, it's not part of the original Newlands subdivision, but it's also not really its own neighborhood. It trades like it's part of Newlands, maybe minus a small amount because of, let's say, the high density that's nearby. So for purposes of this analysis, I'm going to go all the way up to Hawthorne, and I'm going to go all the way down to Alpine. I'm then going to go west to where the houses stop into the foothills, and I'm going to go east all the way to Broadway, keeping in mind that the far east and west sides of these, the ones right up against Broadway are going to sell for big discount, and the ones that are right up against open space are going to be like waterfront property, because that's how the homes back to open space trade. But here's the thing. In the last 6 months, in this footprint, there have been only 6 sales. 6 in 6 months. And most of those sales, all of those sales are below $3 million. So 3 of them were between 1 and 2, and 3 of them were between 2.5 and 3. That's not a lot of data. 6 transactions in 6 months.
Huge sample size. Yep.
Okay. As of right now, there are 10 properties on the market, and they start at 2.15, and they go all the way up to just under 6. There are 3 under contract, so 3 out of the 10 are under contract, so 30% of the market, and one's at 1.65, these are the list prices, one's at 3.65, and one's at just under 6. So the way to do the analysis, if you were thinking about buying or selling, is relevant to your price range. And there's currently a little bit of a gap between 1.5 and 2.5, where nothing. Well, I guess there's one listing that exists, right? And I'll mention the address. We're not analyzing this house, and it's a house, interestingly enough, that's listed with a Denver agent, which is kind of funny, and it's been on the market for over 160 days. 3056 8th Street. I'm not going to say anything else about it because we can't talk about active listings. But to really get granular into these listings, you need to look at the solds, you need to look at the actives, and you need to look at the homes under contract. And because there's only 10 of them, I think what I'll do this week for the newsletter, Hamish, is just do a Newlands dive into these listings themselves. I don't know if I want to do all 10, but we can do most of them. One of these is doubled. The one on Grape Street is on here twice. I don't know why. Because they have it listed independently on both MLSs. So there's really only 9, not 10. I've already talked about the one at Grape, so I won't talk about that one again.
You're talking about these price points, and I think it's worth mentioning there's like a gradient. Like the further west you go, just almost, I don't know, is it proportional? But it gets proportionally more expensive until you're right there on third. Yeah. And so there's missing pockets, right? It's even more granular too.
That's true. Hamish is absolutely. The closer you are to open space, the more valuable the property. North-south facing lots are more valuable than east-west. Yeah. And the size of the lot has a huge impact on valuation. One of the biggest challenges in Newlands is a lack of privacy between these homes. And so design matters too. And that's very much a qualitative analysis. One of the interesting things about 4th Street is that the east and west side of 4th Street trade differently because the west side is elevated and the east side is low. And the low side is psychologically, people do not like it when they have to look up at their neighbors. Or people walking on 4th Street look down on them. It is not stigma, but it has a market impact. And I can't. I mean, I could do the analysis if you really wanted me to do the analysis. If you were my client and you said, "Hey, Osmond, I would like I'd like to buy a $5 million house in Newlands in the next 12 months. Show me this east-west difference." Like, great, let's do it. I'm going to pull down all the sales on 4th Street for the last 10 years, and then we're going to look at the median sale price year over year, and you'll see the difference because I know it exists. It's absolutely true. And I could see it in buyer behavior. They favor the higher home than the lower home. So if you're considering the lower elevation home that has the higher street next to it, I'm going to mention that this is a potential issue in the future, not to mention drainage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. I mean, you're the target of that. I mean, not target, but the water's target.
Yeah.
You know.
So we'll talk about the active listings in the newsletter, but let me just talk about some of the solds really quick, because I think we can talk about sold listings here in the pod. And, maybe we should... Well... We're doing sales of the week, Hamish. Maybe I should hold off on this. But let's see if there's one that's interesting.
Oh. Do you remember that mid-century modern one in in Newlands that like got a ton of price cuts and it needed a bunch. I think this was last year.
The one that was mid-century. Yeah, I remember. It needed tons and tons of work. That one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the one that I just saw on Street View. I mean, not to tangent, but because there was one that
you're tangenting.
I'm tangenting horde. Yeah. I don't know. Anyhow, carry on.
Well, I mean, there's 6 sales here. We're not going to go through all of them. I'll just talk about one of them, 2925 4th Street. And I'm going to add this to...
yeah, check it in the show notes or message it to me, and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah. So this is a home that actually was not that old. It was built in 2005. I mean, I'm just double checking because it may be... No, it effective and actual year built was 2005. So this is a home that is one of the last ones before compatible development came into play. So you could build a larger home on a smaller lot back then. And this is a roughly 4,400 square foot house, 4 bedrooms, 5 baths, 3-car attached garage. And this type of home so offended the neighborhood that they petitioned city council to not allow large houses. This is not the home. It's an example of houses that pissed off the neighborhood of people that have smaller houses, and they saw these large homes being built on small lots, and we ended up with an ordinance in Boulder called compatible development that limits house sizes based on lot sizes. In addition to all the other, zoning that exists, setbacks in particular, and height limits, you also have size limits, and this house probably couldn't be built today. It would be challenging, particularly given that it's east-west, not north-south facing. But it's an interesting design. It actually looks very Nantucket-y with the shake shingle on the exterior.
It does.
And it is when you climb up into it, you are lifted above the neighborhood. The kitchen's okay looking, but looks probably original to 2005, like that style of cabinet and finishes you probably wouldn't use today. But I think they did a nice job with staging it. It still is, I mean, for a $2.8 million house, it's reasonable. It doesn't show badly. The layout is classic. 4 bedrooms on the upper.
Yeah,
5 bathrooms.
Fine. Yeah, and 2000s. I mean, it's more functional than an older one. And, yeah,
and you could spend maybe a couple $100,000 and tear out this kitchen and put in something that's more current, and you have a fantastic house. You don't have much of a yard, right? But you also have North Boulder Park steps away. So you can kind of forego the yard issue in Newlands pretty easily. So I would call this way better than most in terms of houses. The one thing I probably would have advised doing is thinking about that darker exterior. Even though I like the look of Nantucket houses, this sort of looks a little out of place in Newlands, in Boulder. I think a more current exterior finish, just where the shake shingle is. Nowhere else. I think we could just go with paint everywhere else. The paint, the garage doors. It's amazing, by the way, what you can use AI for now with color. Like, ask it to redo the exterior finish. And the houses transform. And getting numbers on that, you could maybe spend $50 or $100 and get $250 out of it. But you have to be careful not to cross that $3 million threshold because the market really shifts above 3. So I think they priced it right at 2.8, and it was available for 2 full weeks before it went under contract. And it eventually sold for $50,000 below list, which is sort of a token negotiated discount at this price point. And conventional mortgage, but 3-car garages, this kind of size house, and on 4th Street, on the high side of 4th Street, this is a really good comp for understanding where the market is today. And I think these people are going to do really well in the future when they update the exterior finish and redo the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the baths.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, and I think that exterior with some modern touches to it will really pop. Yeah. It's
got a very pretty elevation, and that corner is designed to feature, the south corner is designed to feature the views. So I think this is a very nicely designed house, and even though it was dated, I think that it was well bought at 2.745. Oh, there was an additional $19,000 concession for something. We don't know what it was. So it was a little more than $50,000 below list, but I mean, that's probably a roof or something like that.
Tokeny.
Okay.
But I was going to say, that's our market wrap sales. I like the deep dives into certain neighborhoods, though.
Well, I feel like AI cannot really, it is not doing a great job of analyzing the whole market. And I don't think it's going to be there to give you the detailed granularity that buyers and sellers really should be getting from their agents. And I pretty much did this one live, right? Like we're just talking about the division of where this market split out in terms of price ranges. The dollar per squares range from 600 to 1,000. And most of those sales, all of those sales, one of those sales crossed 1,000. So the sales in the last 6 months range from 604 a square to 1,300 a square. 1,300 is, I mean, that's a pretty.
You pulled up what
number.
was available, but going from there, you did it live.
That was 740 Hawthorne that sold for almost 1,300 a square, which, I mean, and it was marketed as fantastic redevelopment opportunity, despite the fact the house was built in 1910. Really? Because I sure hope. Oh, hold on. Nope, you got full demo permit. Never mind. It is a redevelopment opportunity. So that's probably.
But hey, due diligence. Yeah.
No, right there. It's because the dollar per square is irrelevant.
No, but
it's in the
for the
listing
buyer,
description.
yeah. If you see something like that, wait to see a demo permit. Yeah.
I mean, it's a 9,600 square foot lot that's north-south facing. So the dirt is worth $1 million. No, I think that's well bought too. But when you, at first glance, right, you're like 1,300 a square. And then it's marketed as a redevelopment opportunity, and sometimes people market these things without actually getting the demo permit. But this one's really clear that it got through historic preservation and has a fully approved demo permit. And this, by the way, is how you list houses like this. If you really think the value is in the dirt and not in the structures that are on it, get the demo permit. It costs you nothing, well, relatively nothing, and then you can truly market it like that. It still took over 2 months to sell. Oh man, look at the listing. They listed it first at 1,150, and then they're like, "Oh, oops, I screwed up," and they added 3 zeros. I'm 1.15. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Assistant mistake. Yep.
Yeah, always blame it on the assistant. It's absolutely the assistant. It's not that the listing agent, lives in the co-listing agent lives in Estes Park.
Couldn't be.
All right, sure. Okay. Well, that's Newlands, and I just want to contrast how different this analysis is. This discussion of these houses, even just with 2 comps that we've talked about now for Newlands, is from like a generic analysis of a larger market, and even worse, an AI-driven or algorithmic analysis that is not being fed accurate data.
It's saving for the topic about the existential and things there, but agreed.
Well,
it's only as good as the context you feed it.
Well, yeah, we're going to tease you that we've been using AI pretty heavily in the last couple of weeks, and for very unique use cases that I think it actually does add value for, and we'll talk about that more when we get to our existential AI risk topic in the news. Okay. Time for sales of the week and the lessons that we learned from them. And these sales are chosen because they represent certain neighborhoods, property types, price ranges, and the goal is to illustrate market conditions in those locations and property types for those specific types of homes. And again, we can't talk about active listings on the podcast. I do talk about active listings in the newsletter, and if you are a buyer or seller that are working with us, you could just pick up the phone and we could do a video call to talk about active listings anytime because it's sure faster and more efficient than getting in the car. And half the time we can eliminate active listings from consideration before we even get in the car. But let's get into it. All right, our first one is 4303 30th Street. And are we doing this by price? Oh, yeah, we're doing this by price.
The price, I got it, yeah.
Oh, no. Well, yep, it is, because the last 2 are Newlands. All right, so this home sold for $1.385. It is in Orange Orchard, which is a neighborhood that's just northeast of J Road and US 36, also right next to what's called the Area 3 Planning Reserve. And this is an area that is very likely going to see a lot of development in the next 10 years if City Council gets their way. In fact, I just did a little 2-minute video talking about the that there are estimates for 20,000 more people living in the planning reserve. So what exists there now, Orange Orchard is a lovely neighborhood with larger than typical lots. I think it was developed mostly in the 70s and maybe the early 80s. It has a couple of cul-de-sacs, and some of these back right onto what looks like open space, but may not be. Might be part of this planning reserve. Now, there's also, this is called regulatory risk. Is this ever going to turn into housing or not? It's unclear, but there clearly is a push for it. So keep that in mind, and I don't know if the buyer knew that, but the house itself was pretty nice. It's a tri-level, but it's a larger tri-level. Actually, it's very similar to a listing we'll be bringing to market, Hamish, in terms of its design. Sitting on a 17,000 square foot lot, so that's almost half an acre, and about 3,000 square feet, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. When you look at the pictures, I think they did a nice job of refreshing the exterior. This is actually something we're talking to our buyer about doing. And they didn't paint the brick, which inside the house, which I don't know if that's a mistake or not. We can have arguments. I think it is. They probably should have, even though I don't personally like that aesthetic. It does sell, but they've updated the tile work, right, with octagonal tile. Some of the paint colors look a little dated, and some of the photos look a little dark.
These photos are cell phone, I think.
I sure hope not, but they might be. Like, they're not amazing, and they're off-season photos. Like, look at that summer picture of the tree. But
off-kilter,
listed for $1.395 on January 12th, under contract 3 days later, sold for $1.385, 10 grand below list. And no additional concessions. And I just got to wonder if the buyer knows about the Area 3 planning reserve and is totally fine with what are currently like a bunch of social trails that run along the creek turning into housing in the future. But one to watch, because Orange Orchard is a really cool neighborhood, and this location is like ground zero for the largest potential development in Boulder history since the 1950s, when Martin Acres was developed. It's bigger than that, with almost 500 acres of land, and I think 7,000 or 8,000 potential dwellings, which translates to 20,000 potential people living there in likely what's going to be higher density housing, in my opinion. And
I think
will look a lot
pretty likely. Yeah.
It'll look a lot like what Sofer Sparn just designed for 55th and Arapahoe, which is this big black cube.
The cube. Yeah.
The cube.
The cube. Yeah.
So, anyway, that's this particular property, and I think at 1.385, this was a steal. Even knowing that there might be a lot more future development here, that's a very nice lot, a decent house, and a reasonable price. Okay, our next one. Hamish, you know a little bit about this house.
This is, I think I know the buyer's agent for this one. It says here Osmond Parvez.
Oh,
and so,
right. What's the address of this house? Let's start there.
This is 1190 Albion Road, or Way, and we went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out Albion Road or Way. It just as a trivia thing, it's listed as road. Google says Way. The title company says whichever way you go, it's going to be okay. It sold for $1.386 million, and Osmond, you negotiated quite a nice little reduction concession here.
That's okay. So yeah, that's true, and it is in the notes that there was a $40,000 negotiated concession, and we don't really want to go into too much detail, other than this home checks a lot of boxes. Albion is a fantastic street, like its neighbor Berea. These little circles don't get a lot of traffic on them, except from people in the neighborhood, and they tend to be very closely knit. They're on flatter ground and further up the hill, and you're really close to the rec center if it continues to exist, and you're really close to the shopping center. And when we looked at this house, it was very clear that it had been owner-occupied, and the improvements put into the house had been done by the owner, not as a cheap flip, but for themselves. It showed really nicely and seemed to have been very, very well maintained. It had an addition in the back, so the square footage we weren't sure was accurate because that addition added a lot of livable space to the backside of the house. And the landscaping was fantastic. The deck was really, really nice. The mature trees, and then a larger than one car garage. I didn't actually measure the square footage, but it was very obviously much bigger than one car, maybe one and a half car. In the back, a little solar system on the roof, but overall really nice house and priced right. We had competition, which is why we initially ended up going over the list price by $36,000 was to fend off that competition. But then we also wrote a very tight contract timeline, and it was necessary to get a lot of inspections and due diligence done during a 10-day period, which meant we were there quite a bit, as well as our buyers were there with contractors trying to understand things, because it turns out that there were issues that were unknown, and those issues were substantive. And at the end of the day, we documented it all with reliable, legitimate contractors for what it would cost to fix these issues. And the listing agent and I went back and forth, and we eventually negotiated something that worked for the buyers and sellers. And I think they got a fair concession, given the amount of work that it turns out this house needs, which includes some sewer line repairs, the roof condition, and other things that we don't really want to go too much into. It worked out, and the seller was very reasonable, and the buyers were very reasonable as well. And I'm glad the transaction worked out for our clients. And what's funny about this house is I'm pretty sure they could have gotten a much higher sale price if they repainted the exterior, because that blue trim and like light tan color, while it might grow on you, is not current at all. And you can see examples of houses that have sold for a lot more without the addition with a more current paint scheme.
And that like natural wood porch overhang is, I mean, that's really in. So with the right contrasting colors and everything, it would be a very fetching home. I didn't see this.
It is a fetching home. It's just a dated color scheme.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like, I mean, the sellers did a great job too. They put together a little packet because they had like wildfire mitigation people come out and give them suggestions and stuff. They included that just during showings, I believe. And then like this whole living history about how they xeriscaped the yard and what they're doing with the veggie garden and everything. I mean, these people were for sure green thumbs. And it showed in that binder. It gave it a good hard look. So.
Okay, let's go on to 1625 4th Street. And this property just closed on February 20th. Full list price. Built in 1960. It's a one-story ranch without a garage. And it's post-war. Marketed as mid-century, which... Is it really mid-century? It's sort of technically built... It's technically built mid-century. I mean, only maybe the rounded... doorways. Mid-century design has very intentional elements. High transom windows, a central fireplace. You know, those are the key elements of mid-century, and this doesn't really have those things. But it was marketed as mid-century, and yes, constructed in 1960.
The wood paneling certainly says mid-century.
I mean, what's interesting is that it's actually two houses on one lot, and that makes it really quirky and unique.
Yeah, it is.
The lack of a garage has a big impact. The busyness of this location with respect to people utilizing the park and the bike path that's directly to the north has an impact on the valuation here. But at the end of the day, it's actually a lot of property for not a crazy number, which is probably why it went under contract pretty fast and sold for full list. There was, it looks like, no additional disclosed
interesting list price. Yeah. 1,411.
Yeah, 1,411, a very interesting list price. It's a quirky deal. I don't, this is the type of deal where there's so much to understand because it's marketed as two houses on one lot. And it's a legal non-conforming duplex. So what does that? So what does exactly does that mean for the buyer? What sort of financing is available for legal but non-conforming? Do the banks care that it's non-conforming? And can you get permits to do additional work given that the duplex is non-conforming? It's going to, there's all sorts of risk in a deal like this where it's a quirky and weird transaction.
A lot of unknowns. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the houses themselves look
Quirky.
fine. They're very livable. They're probably rentals now, although it says not currently rented. It says rental information was available on request, but it wasn't provided publicly, so we don't know the actual rent roll for the property. I think this is the kind of thing where these people might be looking at Sundance, right? And we're going to be...
Totally.
The buyers are looking at this being like right downtown, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, split across 2 houses. I'm going to rent the heck out of this thing for people that are just here for Sundance. It's not a mansion, but it's not just the mansions that people rent during something like Sundance.
And there's a nuance, being that there are 2 buildings on this property that I can discuss too with the Sundance Film Festival. I was really quick though. This updated kitchen, I guess the one with the black countertops. Do you see this like peninsula in the middle of it where the stove is, and then you have to walk all the way around for additional cabinetry? It's got to be. You put things you don't really need quick access to on that side, and then when you're cooking, it's on the other side. There's some wonky elements
weird.
To this one.
Super weird. Absolutely. I was looking at the other kitchen that also looks a little weird. Yeah. I mean, there's some, this is a funky deal. And I do think that this makes the most sense for somebody that maybe they need staff housing. Maybe they are looking at short-term rental market opportunities. It's quirky. And the location is one that is challenged by proximity to the park. And we know the social issues and the homelessness that's in that zone is pretty high. So, that's what strikes me as the use case for this transaction. I do like the included floor plan. It looks like really old school though. Like it's not from the 3D app that we use. It's drawn by somebody, but there's no reference to who actually drew it. And there's some liability in providing a floor plan like this. Well, in any event, the buyer had lots of time to do the due diligence, right? They went under contract in 6 days, and then they closed 32 days into the so that's plenty of time to if the contract was written right to exit if there was something funky.
Yeah, if it didn't work out the way they'd imagined, they would have the time to figure it out. I do like and I guess it's because they're 2 different buildings and they even have like kind of separate addresses. But I like covered walkways between buildings and kind of like the central, like almost courtyard patio area between the buildings. And the outdoor spaces, to me, I quite like. I like being surrounded by your building as kind of a privacy fence.
All right, let's move on to Louisville, where we're going to talk about 644 South Manorwood. And this is another listing that moved very quickly. It was listed at 2.299, so just under 2.3, and it sold for 2.2. It went under contract within the first week, which usually means a lot of buyer interest. And this particular house was built in 1991, 3-car attached garage, 5,600 square feet, 5-bedroom, 5-bath on a decent-sized lot, and very importantly, back to the course, so you get these great views that then look to the west. These views are to the west.
Yeah, west.
Apologies. Yeah. West-facing views, nicely designed around it. So it screams 1990 builder, right? Like it's not... There's a lot of design choices that are from that era, but some updates. The paint has been updated. The bathrooms have been updated. The exterior paint, I think, is still a little dated in its color choice. But overall, if you need a big house and you want to be close to Boulder and you need it for your family, this was a great choice, particularly because your investment is protected by the views. And the size of the house is very livable for families.
Large,
and Louisville is a fantastic community. So this is a home that makes a lot of sense, and they managed to negotiate $100,000 off the list, which is excellent. So congrats to the buyer's agent for doing that. It was a cash deal, and they still, maybe that's where the $100,000 concession came in, because they were able to close pretty fast. It was like a 2-week transaction for that $100,000. Yeah, checks the boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big home and a textbook neutral colors home. If you look at it's all, it's 50 shades of gray inside. The carpet, the walls, the baseboard, everything, even the tile. But it's a blank slate.
Yeah,
it's also not at the end of any greens, so unless you have some really bad golfers, you should be a little bit more insulated from stray golf balls.
Yeah, and there actually aren't that many homes that have this sort of western view in Coal Creek, in Coal Creek Ranch. So I think that protects the buyer as well. I think it's not like the stunning deal, but it's an investment that should hold its value very well in the long run.
Yeah, it's a very nice example, I think. Of
very nice example.
Yeah.
For Coal Creek Ranch and for Louisville, for a very, if I did the analysis just of Coal Creek Ranch, I think it would be very interesting to see how that has progressed over time in terms of dollar per squares, desirability. It's a solid location. I think it'll do great.
Mm-hmm. On to the next.
Okay, our next one is 1652 Poplar Ave. We're back to Boulder. And this home was listed on January. Oh, I'm sorry. It was listed back in October. Oh, no, strike that. It was listed back in March for $3.65.
Oh, yeah.
And they cut the price in October to $3.495, so just under $3.5. And then nothing happened throughout the season. They brought it back, pulled it at the end of the year, brought it back in January at just under 3.4. And then it was on the market 2 weeks before it sold for 3.25. So original list 3.65, sold for 3.25. So $400,000 of disappointment for the seller, and quite a few months waiting on market for the house to attract a buyer. 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, large at 6,500 square feet, and a 3-car attached garage with an 1,800, almost 1,900 square foot lot, tri-level, built in 2005. So this is another one that predates compatible development passing as an ordinance. And although this lot's so big, I think you could probably build this again, like a 18,500 square foot lot. I do really like this part of town. I think that it's reasonably secluded. You've got north-south orientation, and you're not that far at all from Alpine, Alpine Balsam, and yeah. Oh, actually, sorry. We're north of Iris. You're really close to actually. My brain is getting a little bit. Yeah, Lucky's. That's what I'm thinking about. Yeah. Not the other way around. The Lucky's Empire is really close. Like walking distance, you could take the little hidden path down Poplar and be in the Lucky's, or as my
the Empire.
My client sometimes calls it the Unlucky's because of how expensive it is. I love Lucky's. Okay, don't get me wrong, but it is definitely not the cheapest grocery, but darn convenient to Lucky's. So nice house, great spot. And now let's look at the details of the house itself. Exterior finish. This is clearly a custom home, right? Look at the design with this big atrium in the middle of the house, and the choice of dark woods and very conservative and traditional design. The exposed wooden beams that are probably faux beams, but still it gives it that look. And it's a look that you probably don't need to update much, right? You can live with the way it looks because the whole home is of that era. They've done some updates, like the bathroom and the primary clearly is not original. And interesting, the choice, like look at that tub, Hamish. It's kind of like,
let me find it.
It looks like it's earthen. And the interior stonework is an interesting look too. Today it's not.
And there's some rugs that are like look distressed.
It kind of looks like Knights of the Round Table fantasy house. Like,
yes,
it's very
exactly.
stony and looks like. What I want my house to look like is I want it to look like a medieval castle on the inside, and I really like the pub in the basement. Like that looks like a British pub.
Yeah.
Or an Irish pub. Very cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Very cool and very nice outdoor entertaining spaces. I actually really like this house, and I certainly would
very quirky.
And it sat for a long time. So this is one of those things where the seller had to just come to reality, right? They weren't getting 3.65. They weren't getting 3.5. And then they eventually said, okay, how about 3.4? And they capitulated at 3.25. I think this buyer did a great job. If you're into this style, right? And here's the thing. You and I are into this style.
It's part of the struggle.
Because we're like, oh, this is kind of cool. It feels like a castle inside. But I could feel like my wife would be all over and not be all over this style at all. She'd be like, this is horrible.
She'd be like, Osmond, no. Yeah. And there's still things, that like it's just got some mismatch. Like there's a picture of the walk-in closet, and like that, it's just like a black wood, and I think it's like that MDF style like organizer.
This is like, I called California Closets, and they threw in this to maximize my storage in the closet. And I was looking at this, I was like, this is fine, because all I care about is maximizing storage. Let's make sure there's a lock on that one drawer so my kids can't pull out the guns, and we're good. Like, that's what this closet screams. It doesn't match any of the other finishes in the house. But it's also just a primary closet. And I would say the bathroom looks modern and weird too, right? Like, it doesn't really match the rest of the finishes in the house, but honestly, who cares? Because you're getting so much house. And this is an example of a good deal above 3, right? This is where the deals are better above 3. You're under $500 a square at the closing price. So yeah, no, I think
3-car garage.
Yeah, central to Boulder, and walking distance to the Lucky's Empire.
That it looks like a custom hot tub. I don't think you would call that a pool. I would hope it's heated, but that's also outrageous and cool and interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what that is. Yeah, outdoor spa is just steps away.
Yep,
a little scamp. The AI wrote this. Your outdoor spa is just steps away from the primary suite. A little scamper in the snow on a moonlit night, softly soaking sunlight on an early, easy summer afternoon.
Holy alliteration.
Somebody really was enjoying their AI. Here's the entranceway. An inviting entrance for your guests. Feel beyond welcome. Arriving for a memorable moment by the fire, in the pub, or watching a movie together. Magic is right here. That's the description of the entryway. Okay.
Magic's right here. Anyway, moving on.
Magic is right here. Next listing.
805 Linden Ave, and our final listing of today. Oz, when was it first on the market?
Okay, so 805 Linden. Let's talk about the location, and then we'll get to when it first hit the market. So this is part of what I think of this as part of Wonderland Lake, right? It's a little bit south of the lake, but it's this whole Wonderland development, and there's a little tiny reservoir called Maxwell Lake Park in here. And there's some social trails that cut through, so it's kind of a magical spot in terms of its access to open space trails, Wonderland Lake in particular, as well as if you want to hop on your bike and get on the 4th Street bike path. It's all really close. And it should be far enough away from Linden Ave itself that the busyness is not that big of a deal. So some of these homes let me look at the actual distance. Some of them are set back further than others. This particular one
looks reasonable.
It's about 100 feet, right? Maybe a little less. Let's call it 75 feet. You can see there's a bike path right through the front yard. Like, it doesn't feel like you're right on Linden, but I mean, it is close to Linden. It is a big lot, so it could support a much bigger, newer home in the future. No one's going to care if you scrape it because it was built in the 70s. It's only a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with 3,000 square feet. And it was listed at 1.495 back in February, on February 3rd. It's still February. And then it went under contract within a week, and it sold for 1.455. And I think the use case for this is not the existing house. I think the buyer is going to scrape this thing, or we don't really scrape anymore. We deconstruct. And then, because we're not allowed to scrape, we have to reuse the existing materials. The house itself, there really isn't anything exciting to talk about inside. Because it's all pretty dated, and it's really about building a $3.5 to $4 million house. Maybe reusing the foundation. I mean, the foundation looks pretty robust and large. One of the reasons I chose this one, Hamish, is because of the attic photo.
Right.
So when you look at the attic,
I'm looking at that one.
they're looks to be like water leaks into the insulation. And this is one of those things where you're like, is this a giant moldy attic? And you probably should you should absolutely make sure you test. Because it can get into the substrate materials. It can get into the plywood. And it could be pretty costly to mitigate, depending on how the spores and other things, right? But how the mold has spread throughout the house. Like, we've heard of 6-figure ducting, right? Having to be torn out and replaced. Gosh, that one. But this house doesn't have ducts, right? Look in the basement, and you see, like, there's no ducts visible. Although there's one board that's painted white, which is a little bit alarming.
In the basement.
But if you look at the other photos, it's all radiant. So I don't think this house has ducts.
It is painted white.
Yeah, I don't think this. I mean, this is pretty much.
The boiler's missing. Oh no, that's washer dryer hookup. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think this one is. I mean, yeah. If the foundation's robust and stout, start from there. The attic in that like dark spot. It's so interesting.
What I don't understand is why they would have included this photo in the photo stack.
Seriously. I mean, it's conditioned space. Like, they've got a little baseboard heater there. But
I mean, I guess, okay, so let me play devil's advocate. You include this photo so you're not hiding anything. And buyers can have this discussion over whether there's a mold issue here or not in advance. And clearly they've already pulled away some of the insulation so you can see the dryness of the board above it. And it's possible that the old roof leaked. And the only thing you need to do is tear out all this old insulation and put new insulation in, and you're done. And maybe that's why they put this here. But I don't know. I think it would be better to have called the buyer's agent before every showing and shared this photo and said, look, there's a bunch of bad insulation. But actually, honestly, what's even better is spend the $2,000 or $3,000 and replace all this insulation. Like, you could just get it replaced.
Proof that it's not bad. You know, just a sign. Insulation got wet. It's been mitigated. There's no mold. Like, you know.
I mean, this is the type of scenario we would want to talk about with our client if we represented the seller. To say, like,
let's get ahead of this.
Let's get ahead of this by, like, removing it all and putting in new insulation. And then you don't even need to drywall it, but at least put in new insulation, because that's not expensive. It's not time consuming. A handyman can do it, and you're done. But of course, if you start peeling out the insulation and it turns out there's a ton of mold there, well, even then, I think it's better than if the buyer discovers the mold and then you have to, like, work through the process of selling it, of mitigating it and then selling it. I think this is a fair deal for the house. This photo is just such a weird thing to see in the listing.
So strange. And this location, like you were saying, right, like, really, really nice. Yeah.
It is really nice, provided you understand the trade-off of Linden, because Linden is busy, but you are set back from Linden, and you have basically direct access to that little lake, and then back into Wonderland Lake just a little further to the north, and then there are social trails just to the southwest, as well as legit trails. The goat trail is there. Like, it's a really good spot, and I think that it's a buyer that understands the trade-offs of this location, and you're getting a really decent-sized structure to start with on a big lot. It's mostly lot value. That's what this deal is. I think so. Yeah.
And if you can, you deconstruct those insulation bats and they turn out to be good, then you get to reuse those too. Boy howdy.
Okay. I would not reuse any of that. I would just look at those dark stains and be like, you're out of here. Okay, let's talk shameless self-promotion. We are getting ready to list a property in north central Boulder. It's a townhome, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths. I think it's like 1,800 square feet, something along those lines.
Bonus room too in the basement.
Bonus room in the basement, and HOA has a pool, has 1 car covered parking, and I can't give you much more detail. We just got it staged. Hamish will be photographing and videoing this house shortly, so we think we'll have it on the market by next weekend, but it could be a week later. Probably. And interestingly enough, it's actually currently marketed as a rental, and if it turns out that it gets rented beforehand, it may not end up listed at all. But it's going to be priced aggressively, and it makes a lot of sense, particularly for a young professional that maybe wants a roommate on top of that. It's a cool house for a lot of reasons, and its location is very central to all of Boulder. So I don't know where the price is going to land. My guess is in the low sixes.
Yeah. It is 4-bed, too. That bonus room has a closet and things. But I would say there's no bathroom that would serve that bedroom. It's on the top floor. So it's a bit of a stretch if you're trying to shower or something.
Yeah, technically it's a 4-bedroom.
Yeah, by definition. Right? But huge, like, kind of storage space and workshop space down there in the basement, too. It's got new AC. HVAC's kind of been redone. It's got a really neat kitchen. There's a cool little fold-down spice rack that seems to get a lot of people's attention, and a nice gas range. It's a cool spot, and it's got a gorgeous floor. That floor gets a lot of compliments.
I mean, the equivalent the equivalent house in Martin Acres would be, entry-level house would be $800 or more, and you're at $600. The HOA is a little on the high side, but I think they're reserving for the roof, and you get the pool. So that's something to think about. And if this property interests you, give me a call and we'll give you more details.
Precisely. Or for rental, too. Give us a call.
Okay. We're finally to our news segment, Hamish. Time for some hot takes.
Coming to town. Yep. Robert Redford is risen up, and he's bringing us Sundance.
Oh, Hamish, why'd you have to put it that way?
Poor taste.
Just so dark.
Poor taste, yeah.
Well, the official locations have been announced. Sundance has issued a press release, and those locations are interesting. Bodecker Theater and the Dairy Arts Center. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Dairy Arts Center, the Boulder High School Auditorium, the Boulder Theater, Casey Middle School Auditorium, Chautauqua Auditorium, Cinemark Century Boulder, which of course makes a lot of sense. I think there's 8 theaters in there. E-Town Hall, the Gordon Gamm Theater inside the Dairy, Mackey, where I just was there last night, the Munzinger Auditorium, which is also part of CU, the Rogue Green Theater, which is part of CU. I've never been in the Rogue Green Theater. Have you?
I haven't even heard of like 50% of these.
I don't think I've been in the Rogue Green Theater, although I thought I've been in every theater at CU, but maybe not. The Canyon Theater, which is part of the Boulder Public Library. And, that's our list of official... Oh, sorry, I added the Canyon Theater as a theater. That's just a place they're doing a talk or other festival programming. Old Main will also be a place they're doing some festival programming. And it's going to be so these are all interesting locations. It's happening, right? Like, we are less than a year away from Sundance 2027. And the whole city is abuzz. I've seen a lot of concerns over housing for the festival itself. And Hamish, you've got some stuff to talk about there, don't you? Yeah,
I attended a little landlord training thing yesterday. And for the most part, it was pretty... Hey, I mean, there were some good things there.
Was it you attended the Boulder Area Rental Housing Association's training for landlords?
In conjunction, the city of Boulder.
Okay, with the city of Boulder.
Yeah. I mean, we got some really outstanding presentations, as good as they can be, from the code compliance office and stuff. But overall, the kind of, like you said, the town's been abuzz, and one of the subjects they covered twice was the Sundance Film Festival. So we list these locations as, maybe you've got property near any one of these spots, and you're thinking about you could possibly get some revenue renting it out, or how would that look? Well, there's exact words were it's in flux, but from my read, they have created a special type of rental license specifically for Sundance, and right now it only applies to Sundance, and it's called the Festival Lodging License. And I have yet to pull up a short-term rental license and compare it to a festival lodging license, but I'm having a real hard time understanding or seeing a difference. This one permits you to rent your abode for up to 29 days, no more, no less. So I'm going to just run through my bullets here.
Wait, did you say no less? Wait, hold on. No,
yeah. Sorry. You're right. You're right.
No more. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
No more than 29 days. You're right. Good point. The film festival is from the January 21st to the 31st, so it's only, they said 11 days. My math says 10 days. They're expecting 35,000 people to attend outside of the in-town attendees. So, for contrast, Boulder has 50,000 attendees. This is over a larger span of time. They also, that's the average, is 35,000 people in attendance. They expect 50,000 people for the first couple of days. That's when the celebrities come in, things like that. Now, this festival lodging licensing deal, as it stands, say that sale of the week that has 2 structures on it. Say you're renting that out. You can have a long-term rental license on one of them, and then a festival lodging license on the other.
You're talking about 1625 4th Street?
That's the one.
Okay, that funky thing. Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for just a single-family home, just on one plot of land, if you have a long-term rental license, you are not allowed getting a festival lodging license. You have to deregister your home as a long-term rental and then get the festival lodging license in order to rent it for that period of time. And the stick in the mud is, like, say you have a short-term rental license, you cannot advertise it for the Sundance Festival. You can advertise it for the time range of the Sundance Film Festival, but to mention the Sundance Film Festival, you have to have a festival lodging license.
How is that legal?
This is my read, I did well in school, but I wasn't verbatim with my notes.
I just don't get it. Like, you can't, like, if you mention the word, if you say the word Sundance, you need a...
Yeah, let's see. Okay. So, say you do have a long-term rental and you go and you get yourself your festival lodging license, you will be able to switch from your festival lodging license back to your long-term rental without a fee. Though it's unclear if you have to re-inspect your rental to get the long-term rental license yet again. Just some very wild kind of... They're trying, but I'm not quite sure how this all works together. A lot of people there, I mean, I'd assume landlords or property managers were just bewildered by this. They're proposing an ordinance change on Monday, so March 2nd. This will be released February 27th, listeners, and they're changing a couple of things. I think they're going to work so that you can have 2 types of rental licenses on the same property, so you can maintain your long-term and then also get a festival. They're also working to make it so you can have your tenant sign up your property. Say you have a long-term tenant. The tenant is allowed to sign up your property as a festival lodging, get that license for themselves, and sublet your property as a festival lodging to make money with your permission. But that was something they were really proud of. When you get your festival lodging license, it will go to a Visit Boulder site, and you can advertise your property on the Visit Boulder site, which they assume will get a lot of traffic from people wanting to join Sundance. Barha will have resources. It's just all over. Like, I'm trying to see if there's anything that helps you make more sense of this.
Okay, so let me just pause you for a second. And I asked Claude how many hotel rooms are in the city of Boulder, and the answer was, in 2018, according to some report, and I'm not clicking the links to verify, Boulder had close to 2,500 hotel rooms within the city limits. And there have been 4 new hotel rooms that have added 681 rooms. Sorry, 4 new hotels that added 681 rooms. And so, as of right now, the total is somewhere between 2,700 and 3,000 rooms within Boulder city limits. Okay, so let's say it's 3,000, and there's 50,000 people that are coming.
Yeah, they're expecting 90,000, and then a third of that is from out of town. And yes, they shared 2,900 hotel rooms, and then they said when you go like within Boulder, and then when you zoom out by 40 miles, it goes up to like 70,000 hotel rooms, which of course. So their whole mission is to try and keep as many people attending the event as close to and as localized in Boulder as possible. Just with what they're doing is like they kept saying like, we don't want you to have to get rid of your long-term rental license. We want to keep housing supply in Boulder. So I think they're desperately going to try and push this ordinance where you can have two types of licenses for the same property. But as it sits right now, it's a huge headache with no real clear answer. And their answer was, this is in flux. It's dynamic. We're figuring it out too. So if you're following this and you've got a basement, or,
we don't have a lot of time. I think the enforcement. So a couple of things. This is my hot take. We're not going to have enough hotel rooms or Airbnbs. There'll be a lot of under the table renting going on, and the city staff are going to be completely overwhelmed with enforcement. It could be a great week to make a lot of money if you have a luxury property in particular. But if you do, you probably should ask for an exorbitant security deposit, because I've heard of the parties completely trashing your luxury home. So if you're going that route, ask for like 3 times what you think damage they could cause in a week, just to protect yourself, and good luck with it. It's going to be crazy for the week. That many, it'll be like the Boulder every day for a week.
Exactly.
More than the Boulder, because the Boulder is 50,000-ish, right? And we're talking about 90,000-ish people. Wow. And
I brought up Boulder and failed to make the connection. Boulder is one day. The Boulder. This is over the course of 10 days. So they got to get this festival housing lodging license figured out. And why it can't just be a short-term license escapes me. And right now, the only thing that you can use this license for is the Sundance, which we all laughed at. Like, even the people making the presentation, we were like, so what are we doing?
How much? But here we are. What's the license fee?
I'm not sure. I think it was like $75. But that might just be the long-term license fee. I can't recall. I don't even know. So the license fee is pretty trivial. But they probably want a safety inspection, just like with the long-term and short-term rentals. Mm-hmm. And that's like $150 depending on where you go to.
Was there anything about the county? Was there any information from the county, or this is just city of Boulder?
This is city, but it will be applicable to the county, something like that. But I don't have any notes particular to it. I do remember the question asked, and it was something. There was a county lady there, and she was like, "Yeah, we're gonna look at this." I'm not. Don't quote me on really any of this.
If you happen to own a property that you're thinking about renting, make sure you get your licensing sorted early, because they're going to be overwhelmed. It's gonna be very interesting to see how it changes our culture in our community.
I'm optimistic.
What I've been told is that companies will come in and rent entire restaurants for the week, and they will then have their own private events at that restaurant. So locals will not be able to go to the Southern Sun or Santo or any of the popular restaurants in town for the whole week. It will be only private events. And that's why people get angry at Sundance, or have in the past. That's my understanding, okay? And I'm saying that as an individual, not as a board member of anything. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things in flux, and I don't know how well this is going to play out. And hopefully Boulder... the people that live here give Sundance a little bit of breathing room, because it for sure, when you move an event like that from an established location that's used to it to a new location, there's going to be things that get screwed up, and they're going to have to do better next year. So the first year is going to be a learning year, and hopefully everyone handles it in our community as best as they can.
Yeah. It's also the festival starts on my birthday, so neat little thing there. Anyhow, news number 2.
All right, so there's been a lot of news this past week about the existential risk of AI, and it kicked off in earnest with a news article that I saw making the rounds, and I can try to find it, Hamish, or maybe you can. It was on Twitter. And it was an AI CEO of an AI company writing about how models are now recursive. The new code is being written by AI primarily, not by actual software engineers, or the software engineers are just supervising and the pace is picking up. And then lo and behold, a whole suite of new tools dropped from Claude that blew out of the water everything else that's on the market. And the tools are so good that it's created a fear of existential risk or an extinction event for all sorts of white-collar workers, including real estate agents. And my team and I have been having lots of conversations about the risk of AI, the appropriate use of AI as well, because at House Einstein, we're very dedicated to utilizing the most current tools to helping you make a smart decision. But as you heard throughout this podcast, you have to ask whether the information you're getting from AI is actually accurate or not, and is it relevant to your specific situation. And that takes a brain that is a human brain that is looking at this very critically. So I see you is that you pinging me, Hamish, with the link? Okay, great. It's the article that kicked this off for us was by Matt Schumer, and it was called "Something Big Is Happening," and it really I think was the beginning of a lot of people's awareness of the existential risk, not just to real estate agents, but to all sorts of white collar workers. And of course, if it is going to take away 25% of white collar jobs within 12 months, that's massively negative for our economy, right? And also massively negative for real estate, because primary real estate tracks the job market. So at House Einstein, we've been using a lot of tools. We pay for the premium versions of it, and we're trying to figure out how to incorporate these tools into our workflow in a way that makes us more efficient and benefits our client with actual relevant information. A year ago, one of my competitors listed a house up here in Mountain Meadows, close to my house, and they used algorithms to convince our client before they signed the listing agreement. Right, I did not know this was happening. They met with this agent who showed them the house was worth about $400,000 more than what I thought it would sell for, based on local knowledge of market conditions, based on living here, based on the fact that Pine Brook and Sunshine and 4 Mile and Sugarloaf, the 4 major canyons,
very distinct.
They're all very distinct and trade very differently. And this agent had used comps from Pine Brook to suggest a $400,000 perk or up to the list price than what I thought it was worth. And so, of course, they went with her, because who wouldn't, right? She's so confident, and it's $400,000. Turns out,
I think the algorithm is incorrect.
She was totally wrong, and they wasted months and months and months on market. And at the end of the day, they ended up selling it right in the range that I thought it would sell for. And it's sort of like, oh, okay, well, this is the risk of AI, and it's the risk of, frankly, unethical agents that use AI to tell a seller what they want to hear. And you have to be really, really careful and judicious in what you hear as a consumer, whether you're a buyer or a seller, or you're a user of these tools. Don't overly rely on them. They're not there yet, but they do pose a lot of risk. And Hamish and I and the rest of the team, we've been having a lot of conversation. The environmental impact, the water use and the electrical demand of AI is also something deeply concerning. And at the same time, we're not sure exactly how to navigate this, just like you're probably not sure how to navigate this when you're listening to this podcast, other than we're trying to do our best. And we do think there's going to be dramatic change. I personally am pretty sure 90% or more of people have no idea how capable the latest models are. And they're still thinking at best that what they played with 6 months ago is still where they are. It's like not even close to where they are. They're so much better, I think. Hamish, what have you got to say about this?
I've been using it since 2022, and like each iteration for sure has improvements. The nicest one for me has been where it can contain and store memory and keep context of things. But to go off on like the existential thing, did you see IBM stock went down, I think like 13% the moment Anthropic released that their AI could, I guess, decipher and understand a specific type of code. Not a programmer, but kind of those kinds of disruptions, whether or not we like it, I think at this rate, I mean, the current admin and things are super long on AI. it's kind of out of our control, like this head first approach into it. And you're right, like we have to position ourselves and use it as much as we possibly can. I think as more people get displaced by AI and lose their jobs, there's got to be a real discussion of, is this kind of economy and the way that we do things going to work anymore or even be relevant? And what are we going to do to deal with the amount of people that no longer have jobs and their skills have been completely wiped out? And I'm a little worried that our current admin doesn't really want to have those conversations either. So it's like it's an interesting soup of factors, and it's existential. It's very concerning. I the best thing I'm doing is just trying to make sure that I'm okay. Stack a little cash and get rid of my debts, and I'm learning the AI stuff too, but who knows, this recursive learning is a real worry. I've also heard that it could eat itself, where it learns on its own things and it's starting from an incorrect idea and it just eats itself into nothing. Maybe that'd be a nice break. Yeah.
Did you look at the chart I shared last night on our team chat? The chart that I think was from the Financial Times, where it's like...
Got 3 directions.
It's got 3 directions, like a massive surplus productivity boom for everybody, or 0.2% incremental growth, or extinction event for everybody. Those are the 3 outcomes.
Yeah. 0.2%, I think it was. So, hell yeah. But,
we've had technological changes throughout history. It's just the pace of change with these tools is so fast, and it's clearly... So I personally used it this week. I spent time researching comparables for a particular listing, and I put those into a PDF file, and I uploaded it to AI, and I asked it, why is this one listing not selling? And its analysis was actually really good, but I had to cherry pick. I'm the one that chose those, and then I went and looked at its analysis. Right? And when I read the analysis, I realized this is better than 95% of the agents could do, easily.
Yeah.
And so then it occurred to me, and I mentioned this to my wife, and she's like, okay, but most people don't hire their agent based on their analytical skills. That's what you bring to the table. You bring negotiation skills, due diligence support, and analytics, and professionalism. And a lot of agents don't, right? You're doing business with them because you trust them, because it's an expensive transaction and you want them to hold your hand, and they are licensed, but you're not really asking them to do a detailed comp analysis. And if they do one, it's really superficial anyway. So that really isn't different. And I think that's a legitimate point. The analytical skills are going to become less valuable. The negotiation skills and the verbal skills are going to increase, right? Like the trust factor is going to become even more important. But I think that
qualitative analysis as well, right? Like being on the ground, yeah.
Being on the ground, AI can't open a door for now. But here's the thing, right? If there's a upstart in the space that says we only use AI tools for analysis, and the human is the licensee that will go open the doors for you. But then you interact with AI throughout the rest of the transaction. You give the agent the contract. They don't even look at it, by the way. You've signed away your right to sue the agent. They're just going to submit it for you. We guarantee you as AI that these contracts are written correctly within certain parameters that we know work. And then all the agent's going to do is open and close doors and schedule your inspection and schedule your closing. You do everything else, and we will pay the agent, which is like a 22 to 30-year-old that's just out of college or maybe didn't even go to school. They just passed the real estate exam. We'll pay them $50,000 a year. All they do is show houses. They just drive around showing houses and meet people there. You schedule them on an app, and your fee is 1%, not 2.5. Like, that's a business model. It's not going to take that much for an entrepreneur. Maybe we should be creating it, the app that actually schedules agents to go look at homes, and or even become Uber of agents, right? Like if you want to show homes and it results in a closing, we will pay you $50 for the showing, and like in Uber, right? These people aren't even employees. You just schedule them and they go. There's a lot of agents with nothing to do. Okay, they go get $50. And if you happen to buy the house through AI, they submit the offer for you because they're licensed. and then they collect 0.5%. And all they have to do is turn, like an Uber driver, turn on their realtor Uber and go drive around and show houses all day long.
Yeah.
What's stopping?
I mean,
because remember, all agents are contractors. I mean, you're not. Most agents are contractors.
Yeah,
with their brokerage.
But like, still, that showing who's taking you through the house and bringing up things you wouldn't have thought about and identifying potential issues and defects with the home, things like that. I mean, granted, it's not necessarily an agent's job, but it's something that I wouldn't trust any agent to do. Like, I know that's what we do at House Einstein, but you know.
Okay,
maybe if we just get reduced to nothing. But
I'll answer the question in that our regulator keeps us from doing anything less than the minimum duties. But
yeah,
the AI company the AI driven company could say, "Hey, Osman and Hamish, don't worry about the minimum required duties. We'll make sure you're covered. If you ever get sued, we will 100% show up at or if you ever are called in front of the regulator, right? The commission wants to talk to you, and there's a hearing, we will send our attorneys to defend you and demonstrate that we meet all of these prescribed duties with an app. And that, in fact, better than the majority of agents can do." Now what?
Yeah. Pretty dang tempting.
So it does pose an existential threat to the real estate industry, and somebody's going to figure out how to navigate the laws. So in the meantime, we're everyone's kind of sitting around going, all right, how's this going to play out? And at a minimum, we're keeping our pencils sharpened and we're working with AI
ear to the ground.
But it makes a lot of sense that an upstart's going to come in with something that tries to end run, or a company like Zillow, which is not real. I mean, it's a brokerage, but they already treat their people like they're disposable. So Zillow could come in with a service that does this because they've got the resources and the tech stack to go create this. So it's going to be very interesting what happens next in brokerage land. But for sure, people are going to try to end run the licensing problem.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
Isn't that a fun conversation? Yeah. That's funny is I did a bunch of analysis on flipped houses for a client to show him how much more they're selling for, and maybe we need to get into house flipping, Hamish, because AI can't flip a house. It's looking pretty good. So that might be where we move our business. We'll see. But for now, we're in it to win it, and we'll continue
keeping our heads on a swivel. Yeah.
All right.
How do you
want
think
to talk about
time?
I don't really. So the next article is about how this greenhouse gas lawsuit that's filed by the city of Boulder is now moving to the Supreme Court. I don't feel like I know enough about this topic to really even have a hot take, other than I'm glad our city is fighting the good fight. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to side in our favor because there's so many Trump appointees, and recently the EPA said we're not going to regulate greenhouse gases anymore. So, yes, you could argue we've had damages, and the damages occurred at a time period when the EPA was regulating greenhouse gas emissions, and the people selling the petroleum are the ones profiting from these greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, I can see the logic thread, and it did move up to the Supreme Court, so I'm very interested to see how it plays out. I'm not confident, given...
Or when it even gets heard, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when it even gets heard. Yeah. If it even gets heard.
Good point. But Carveouts, you've been skipped over last week, so please.
Okay. Time to talk about toy haulers. And Carveouts is our segment of the podcast where we talk about anything we want to talk about, even if it's completely unrelated, especially if it's completely unrelated. If it has happened to take up some brain space and it's something that we just have been into, then it's fodder for our Carveout section. And my Carveout is that I have been shopping for a replacement for a cargo trailer. And as many of you know, I'm part of a nonprofit that has a camp at Burning Man. And we have 70 to 80 people and several thousand people that come through our camp, 70 to 80 who camp with us. And we, my wife and I, do a lot to support that camp in terms of transporting resources back and forth to Black Rock City, which is about a 2,000-mile round trip. And for the last, 5 years, we've used a cargo trailer. And then it occurred to me that all that time we take setting up a tent on the ground, we could just be like enjoying a cargo trailer plus RV is called a toy hauler. And maybe it makes sense to see if these things are on sale with leftover models. And I went down the rabbit hole, and AI was very useful in doing that research of different models and different manufacturers and different manufacturing techniques, which it turns out they've improved over the years. They're less prone to rot due to the newer materials that they're using. The newer materials for the sidewall no longer even have organic stuff in it, right? There's nothing to mold in the new sidewalls of RVs. So after looking at a lot of used ones online and then finding a deeply discounted leftover model, made the decision that the deeply discounted leftover model was probably the right answer. But in terms of comparing all these different models, AI was extremely useful, and not just one AI, 3 of them. And what I would do is ask one to analyze the other's analysis and critique it, which, Claude was incredibly critical of Gemini. And Gemini was trying to push me into various models. It would say, this is the one that matches all the things you said. And then I would say, wait a minute, what about this? And it would say, oh, wait, you're right. You're absolutely right. The sycophant behavior of the AI was very interesting. And then when I copied and pasted that chat into Claude, and I said, tell me, is Gemini right? It was really critical of Gemini. It was like, Gemini is just constantly
like personal beef.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sell you something. And so if you do have access to more than one model, I would encourage you to use them against each other, and it actually will sharpen your thinking. But just like with houses, you can't take everything with a grain of salt. You have to independently verify, and that takes some time, but it was such a time saver. I felt like within a couple of days of evening queries after work, sitting in bed, getting ready to go to bed and running some queries on Gemini, Claude, and Grok, I was absolutely shocked at the level of information I was able to gather in a relatively short period of time, and have gotten it down to one model that's I now currently have a deposit on that I'm going to have to figure out how to go pick up because it's going to be a multi-day road trip. But luckily I can work remotely, Hamish, while you cover our showings if needed. And that might be what I'm doing in a couple of weeks.
But you'd be working pretty comfortably if you have to pull over. I didn't actually know what to envision when I looked up a toy hauler, and like a camper comes to mind. Something like that.
It's like a travel trailer, but the back of it has a ramp door that flops down, and then you can pull your motorcycles or your side by sides into the back of this. So they typically have a much higher cargo carrying capacity or payload than a regular travel trailer RV, and some of them have very high water capacities, tankage capacities. Like the one that I ended up putting a deposit down has a 100-gallon water tank and has like 3,000 pounds of payload capacity. And because of all the stuff that we're hauling, which includes 2 full-size box freezers full of food, the payload's actually really important. And also, of course, you go down these rabbit holes and you have to think about your tow vehicle and the maximum capability of the tow vehicle. And then you do them. And basically, this is what it boiled down to. Either way, owning an RV is a money-losing experience. And over the course of about 10 years, we could lose about 10 grand on a brand new one with a warranty, or we could lose about 10 grand with an unknown used one the starting point is 10 grand cheaper. However, you're taking a lot of risk in terms of unknown maintenance history and shady dealers and shoddy repairs.
Especially that's rife in this stuff, yeah.
And as potential moisture intrusion, which is a death knell for certain types of materials, right? Like they start to delaminate, and the cost to repair them is higher than the cost of the RV, so people just end up totaling these things. So the newer materials are better than the older ones, but the newer ones really started coming into play around 2018. So understanding all of that took a bunch of time and research, but I'm pretty happy where I think we ended up, and I'll know when we actually go pick this thing up. But in the meantime, here's my second shameless self-promotion. If you're in the market for a 20-foot cargo trailer that's aluminum and is only 6 years old and has been religiously maintained, maybe has a few cosmetic scratches on the outside, but actually otherwise is in exceptional condition, and got driven at most 2,000 miles a year, and there were years it didn't go because of COVID.
And like you re-grease the axle hubs like
every year.
So much.
I don't. One year I did not, and after that I did it every year because I was like, it's not worth the risk. And the grease that came out of the axle that year looked perfect. So it's a really good deal on this all aluminum, lightweight, 8 by 21 foot Legend cargo trailer. If that's your thing, it's available. So reach out.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for pictures of this, and it reminds me. We were looking at like toter homes because we would run to different tracks and stuff all over the country, and we'd be towing like like two cars or three.
What are you talking about?
When I was working at Denver Beer and Oil, when we were going to like different racing and track events and things, because we had the 30-foot enclosed, and so we'd put two cars in there and then a 3-wheeler for fun to get around and like camping supplies and stuff, and then we'd tow that with the F-250. But it started getting to the point where like a toter home would be sweet. You know, it's basically like a semi motor home, and then it's got the towing capacity for a massive trailer too. This stuff is so cool, and you're going to be lap of luxury. Everybody's, I know it's not the point, but like at Burning Man, you're going to be in the envy of everyone.
I don't think so, Hamish, because there are people with $1 million RVs that roll on at Burning Man. This is like an entry-level toy hauler. I might be the envy of a few people in my camp, but we're also there for so long, and the resources we bring are so vital that this just makes sense.
Definitely.
But yeah, there are people there with insane luxury. I mean, Elon rolls in, right? You think he's like staying in a 30-foot RV. He's got, I'm sure, like a multi-million-dollar setup and the camp built for him when he goes. Yeah. Hopefully he no longer goes, but we'll see.
It'd be interesting the reception he gets, given.
Well, I will say there's a lot of angry... I mean, burners come from all walks of life, and, you know, this is one of those things that I would actually challenge them on, because I would say, look, radical inclusion is one of the 10 principles. And that includes people whose politics you don't like.
Politics, maybe.
Okay.
The files and the implications on that, I'm a little... I don't know, is that...
The Epstein files with Kimmel? Yeah. Is that what you're bringing up?
Well, and Musk. Did you see him in there, too?
Well, they're both Musks, but yes, absolutely, I get it.
The big Musk.
But neither of them have been charged, much less convicted of a crime.
Without a doubt. I'm just saying the implications might well be enough.
But we live in a country, Hamish, where you are innocent until proven guilty. And I'm not saying that they're innocent, okay, but at the same time, they're not guilty either because they're not charged with a crime. So radical inclusion means radical inclusion. It means, okay, well, there are these people that I don't particularly like, but should we exclude them from the event based on their politics and their potential criminal behavior? I went to this talk last night. And it was Maxwell. What's her name? It's in my.
Yeah, you had it on your story.
Hang on. Let me get this. Let me get her name right if I'm going to talk about her. So, Michelle Alexander, and she wrote a book about the new Jim Crow, which is now like 12 or 13 years old. But it was all about the incarceration of Black Americans and how having a felony basically will prescribe you a second-class citizenship for the rest of your life. That's what it will mean. You will not be able to get a normal job or housing or even food stamps because you had a felony. And some of these felonies from the 90s were questionable, particularly in cities like LA, where there was where the cops were overreaching and sometimes even planting evidence. And yet these young people were basically criminal. They became like second-class citizens. It's a caste system. I think these are relevant points. But the point I was trying to understand the most is that, you know, it's dangerous to not have a way for humans to come back from a conviction to a level of standing, and convictions really do matter. But so does the presumption of innocence, and I feel like we need to be really careful with particularly with an event like Burning Man that's supposed to be inclusive of all shades of color, all religions, all socioeconomic classes, and And we're lucky in this country to have the presumption of innocence so inherent in our criminal justice system. It doesn't mean I want to hang out with them, okay? Because I'm going to presume that they're shady and not...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on board with you, too, on the radical inclusion and stuff. I just wasn't saying it was about the politics. I was saying, like, specifically his implications in the files, that I think it'll be interesting to see how radical inclusion stacks up against that. And I agree, innocent until proven guilty and all these things. But that was just... I mean, that's got a lot of weight, and it... You know?
Kimball's emails look kind of gross. Look, not just kind of gross. Look gross, right? And there have been protests outside his restaurant here in Boulder, and I will never be scheduling another dinner at the kitchen. I'm sorry, I just can't. It's just and frankly, we've talked about selling the Tesla too, because of the association with the Musk family and Tesla and the things they've said, especially Elon has said online about all sorts of things. I kind of just wish he would, shut up about stuff, because he's sort of like a 14-year-old child. He can't let go of things.
It's kind of showing,
and it's gross, and having that car as a daily for my wife just doesn't feel good. Anyway, but it's an American car company, and there's like, I don't know how many thousands of people work for Tesla, like 14,000 or 40,000, like a huge number of people, and it's an American success story. So, and Henry Ford was an awful human too, and maybe even worse.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay, so our people are
Ford
running
was
around
friends with Hitler, like
yeah, and the people are still buying Fords. So I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah. Anyway,
all right. Hamish, it's time for your Carveout.
Speaking of incendiary topics. Really bad segue, but if you're at all local, you've caught the news that there was a 10-acre grass fire in Thornton. And this was just yesterday, so Feb 25th. And I was at the Barha City of Boulder landlord training seminar, and opened Facebook because the topic that they were talking about was just so enthralling, and saw like that they had closed I-25 in Thornton, and I was like, well, shoot, that's right where I used to work. And so the Watch Duty app kind of gets you a closer update, up to the minute kind of updates for wildfires in the area, and shows you where it's located. And it was right outside. I used to work at I almost think like Salvage Yard is a little bit unfair. It was a collector shop for classic BMWs, and granted, like, it could have looked better and had some nicer like organization and stuff, but like at its core, that's what it was. And when you're parting out cars and fixing things up, it's not always going to be a pretty endeavor. But yeah, so the fire cause is still unknown. The aerial photo and the travel of the winds that I saw from the news, it looks like it started real close to Pinnacle High School. Caught across the grass and lit up the lot, easily, like over 100 cars. A lot of people were storing cars there. There was a restoration business there, and there were a lot of people that were storing their business vehicles there too, like concrete trucks. I know somebody who had a 55-foot trailer with all the possessions from their house that they just sold, stored on the site. Fortunately, no lives were lost. There were 5 injuries, 4 firefighters. I don't know about the last injury. It was nobody that I know from the shop or from that area. But it's like properly devastating. I mean, there were a lot of extremely rare parts and vehicles and sentimental things there. And being so close to home and being one of the only businesses, I think one other got impacted by it, for this very small 10-acre fire that got extinguished quickly. Shout out Thornton Fire Department and all that. But I thought that I'd had like empathetic responses to the Marshall Fire and things like that. But this shook me a whole different way, and I think I'm gonna have a lot more empathetic responses to this kind of stuff in the future too. It's kind of reframed my perspective on this stuff a little bit more, and has hit home. Jason Roll Race Motorsports, ROL. He's put together a GoFundMe. I'm not gonna like link it here, but you have now his information if you want to go seek it out. I think I'm gonna head over on Saturday and try to help with the cleanup process. We've got a few friends with some tow trucks and stuff that can. We're going to start. I mean, there's so much to scrap and go through and organize and figure out, and I mean, just a lot of loss. This shop has been a resource nationwide and internationally. We've worked with some very large YouTube channels and some large automotive shops everywhere because of the information and parts and rarity of the stuff that has been gathered there over time. And I genuinely think this will impact a lot of enthusiasts. Which, classic BMWs, big whoop, but it hurts. It cuts deep. So,
well, you're welcome.
My little mention on that.
You're welcome to put the GoFundMe link in our show notes and support your people. But I get it. It's not the vehicles. It's really the people involved, and their loss of their business and their loss of that resource for their community is a big deal. But luckily, there were no lives lost. And, and hopefully they can recover. And I kind of feel like it's too early, right? It's too soon, way too soon. But usually people, when they suffer a loss like that, there's resilience that kicks in after a while, and it takes their life in a new direction. And usually it's better, or often it's better. I will say it's too soon. Okay, I get that, but I also know that there's brighter day. And it comes back to that, that poem we opened with.
Just about to open that up, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you gotta let things burn, right? Like the poem was, one more time, it's short. It's, yes, you will rise from the ashes, but the burning comes first. For this part, darling, you must be brave.
Yeah. The response has already been very, very kind, and due to the rarity and stuff, we're a little. I'm personally, I don't think. Chris is incredibly stoic. He's the law owner, and then Jason owning the business that runs out of there too. I mean, both of them are just kind of knuckled down to get towards cleanup and everything. I talked to Chris. He said, if the fire hit the structure, fortunately it didn't hit the structure just a lot. He said if the fire hit the structure, he would have just walked away. He would have called it. That was his sign from the universe to be done. So really fortunate. I think it came within a couple feet from that, and yeah.
Well,
crazy coincidental.
Wear full PPE because that stuff is toxic. The fly ash from a fire site is, especially vehicles, it's going to be super toxic.
Yeah, and some of these cars were biohazards when we got them. So.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's probably a good stopping point, and I want to thank you, dear listeners and viewers, for spending the last 2 hours with us. We deeply appreciate your feedback. We deeply appreciate the opportunities you've sent our way. We have new things in the works for the podcast in the future, but if you'd like to see what we're up to right now, you can find us on YouTube and Instagram. You can find us on Facebook and X. And to a lesser extent, you can find me on Blue Sky and LinkedIn, but I'm there too. And if you'd like to consider our services as a real estate brokerage, you can visit our sponsor at houseeinstein.com. And that's where you can sign up for the newsletter and find out what I think about certain listings, including what's happening in Newlands, active listings. Yeah. Can't talk about that anywhere else. And again, one more time, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.